I'd like to call the March 20th, 2023 City Council meeting to order at 7 PM. Can we stand for the pledge of allegiance?
Allegiance to the flag, United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all.
Okay, thank you. We've got a quite packed agenda today, and I know there's some people going to talk, so let's get started. Everybody's here today. Roll call, everybody's present. So I'm looking for a motion to approve the agenda. Written.
Move to approve.
President Greisen makes a motion to approve. Any second?
Second.
Second by Counselor Miller. Any question? Discussion. All those in favor state by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Okay, we have a public comment period here. Or for items that are not on the agenda. I'm going to use this today since we've got it working. We've got a little clock up here. We like to limit to 5 minutes. And we've done this so you can kind of see where you are. So as it gets close, you can get to your important part. And also it allows us to focus completely on what you're saying. So start it right over there, 5 o'clock or 5 minutes. We're going to start with Soil Man. If you'd like to step on up and state your name and your city. And we have to put you on a speaker so the people online can hear you. You can carry it with you or you can sit there. Just really speak into it. We can hear you, but we want them to hear it. So right into the and city of residence and name and when you're ready.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Khosrow Peyravi, known as the Soil Man of Columbia County. I live in Clascanine, and I've been in Columbia County for about over 40 years, starting from Scappoose. Moved my way up to Clascanine. Thank you very much for including me tonight. I am a volunteer with Conscious Planet, a global movement. We have started mainly because we see shortage of food, and also farmlands have degraded nearly 50% or more than in the United States. Topsoil is already gone. So there are a lot of negative information that I could share. However, the bottom part is a positive part. There's no new technology needed to reverse what has happened. The last 100 years slowly brought us to this point. So with the global movement, we started with 5,000 volunteers. Today we have over 17 million worldwide. Guru, the founder of Conscious Planet, he rode his motorcycle 30,000 kilometers from London to Middle East, India. He met with leaders of the nations, especially the agriculture people, to basically wake the world up that we need to do something. Meetings is over. We do not need to meet anymore. It's very clear what we need to do. So we have put together a memorandum of understanding. We handed to 193 nations, which 81 nations immediately signed, which United States is included. And that signing the MOU basically is agreeing that how to you agree with how we are presenting to revitalize the farmlands. Very simple. There are two forms of organic material exist in the known universe, which one is animal waste and the other one tree litter, branches, and to protect the land from sun beating on it, have systems of tree planting, creating shades, and on and on. So I've been working on this about a year now, so I can speak for hours. And I know I have only 5 minutes. So what I'm doing actually, I am reaching out to mayors, to visionaries, to leaders to help us to educate each other. And I am going to schools and basically so far in Columbia County, I have met with five of our mayors, which they have all made the proclamation of calling March 21st the first day of spring. It's also the New Year's Day for me. I'm from Iran. It's the Persian New Year. Our calendar starts on tomorrow, from tomorrow. So Happy New Year's. And this is like a gift for me to be able to do this because what we're doing is to save our soil for future generations. We have been eating the food that belongs to future generations. And we know with this movement, globally, we are going to be successful. So I am here to ask the mayor to make a proclamation and call March 21st Keep Soil Day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I have a bunch of information from them that I'd like to just disseminate to you guys at some time. I mean, if you have any questions or comments at this time. Otherwise, I'll be in touch with you. I'll work on this. Thank you. Okay, we have one more on here. Patrick Hesse, I think it is. Is that right? Come on down.
Welcome home.
Welcome.
Right. Yes, well, I won't take too much of your time, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for having me today. I just want to introduce myself, Patrick Kesse. I'm running for school board, and I'm super excited about it. The number one goal that I have is success of kids. So I'm really excited about that. And I really appreciate too. Thank you for all the time you put in for the city here. And I appreciate these countless hours that you're putting in. And strong schools, I think, are very important for a strong community and vice versa. So thank you very much. And if you like any yard signs or anything, just let me know. Thank you.
Thank you.
You.
Thanks. You have a palm card here in front of you too. Some more information.
Thank you. Okay, any other public comments? Anything online? Anybody else? Okay, we have we'll close public comments. We have a consent agenda. Today we are reviewing, voting on February 4, 2023 council retreat minutes, March 6, 2023 city council work session minutes, March 6, 2023 city council meeting minutes, and March 15, 2023 city council and planning commission land use training. I'm looking for a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So move.
Motion made by Counselor McHugh. Any seconds? Second by Counselor Santiago. Any discussion? All those in favor state by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. I forgot to say aye in favor. Motion carries. Consent agenda. Thank you. Okay, moving forward, we have a presentation on the importance of community branding. Paul Fidrich.
Hi there, before we get it started.
You want to wait and go second, or are you good?
Well, I'm fine, but you don't have the presentation. Okay. Great. First of all, I'm happy to not have the clock on me for the first time ever. Especially the shot clock right there. So, as most of you know, I'm engaged citizen, and I've been a citizen here for about 3 years. I'm on the Economic Development Committee as well as the Parks Committee, and now I'm the 50-year committee as well. And when I first started to engage with the city, really was for the centennial, and I worked pretty closely with a lot of you up here, Jeanette and Pete, And one of the things that Pete and I worked on was a part of the centennial that was a scappoose, past, present, and future. And he came to me and he said, Paul, I've got the past, that's easy, but I'm just having so much trouble with who we are now, present, and then even harder, what's our future? And that got me really thinking about it because, I mean, ultimately, the vision for who we are really hasn't been defined very well, or it's been defined in various ways, hasn't been all that clear. So my background is I have 37 years in product and brand management. Don't do the math. Working for Polaroid, Nike, Fox Racing, Burton Snowboards. I started 2 of my own companies during that period or in between that period, and I've also done consulting in this area. So for the Economic Development Committee, branding really is about marketing, and you're usually when you're marketing your town, a good portion of that is around economic development. So I did a presentation about a month ago on the importance of community branding. I've heard many things about, and I came in front of the council, over a year and a half ago about branding as a public comment, and kind of hoping that the 50-year plan would be also looking at this. But as our attorney said, it's really a land use thing with the 50-year plan. And a lot of people sometimes when they think branding, they're like, oh, we got a graphic designer, we're gonna get a new logo, and we got a new font and whatever. And they think that that's branding, and it's definitely a part of branding, but it's really not what the core of the DNA of branding is all about. Okay. So first of all, when we think of brands, we mostly think of these iconic brands. And what's interesting is the names aren't even there, but you know who they are, right? Tesla, Nike, Target, McDonald's, Starbucks. More importantly, you know what they're about. And that's the emotional connection that brands can create. When you think about Nike, you think about an emotional connection that either the brand has given you or you've gotten from the brand in a way that is very personal. But it's important to designate the difference between a logo or a slogan and branding. I mean, so the Nike and Nike swoosh, that came after really what the brand was all about. In fact, if you know the story, uh, the brand started around Blue Ribbon Sports, and it was around making the best products for athletes. We later today decide to change their name to Nike around the goddess of victory, and that all went back to their brand DNA. A funny story is Phil Knight wanted it to be called Dimension 6 because he thought it sounded cool. But they didn't go that way. It really didn't fit their brand. So from product development to customer engagement, it really informs and shapes the decision-making process, right? When you think Nike, you have a certain feel, right? You kind of know like what they are about. When you see something in the store, before you even see the swoosh, you kind of know that's a Nike product. And that's successful DNA. And in fact, it starts to influence the brand is influencing customers, but also customers are influencing the brand back. So when a brand does something that's outside of its DNA, you kind of get upset about it a little bit. So like we've kind of all seen it where you're like, oh, why are they in that store? Or why are they making that? And so the brand itself gets its own life. And that emotional connection is shared between the brand and the people that are interacting with the brand. So that DNA, the entire thing has to really be created before logos, fonts, slogans, whatever. In fact, when I start talking about brand, the people go, "Oh, okay, I got the greatest idea for Scappoose. It's going to be, great family, even better, whatever. I don't know." But they immediately go to the slogan, which is a mistake. You really want to go to the DNA and what we're all about, or what a brand or a community is all about. So, what makes a great brand? So it has to be unique. It has to stand up with the competition. It needs to be consistent. So, like I just said, if the brand isn't consistent with its messaging, um, as the customer or the people you're interacting with it, so it actually can be upsetting when it's not consistent. And that goes through all your touch points, all your messaging. It's not just about a logo. It needs to be relevant, of course, memorable, and again, that emotional connection. So again, you think about these emotional connections. I mean, I know people that are like, "I gotta have my Starbucks." I mean, it's coffee, whatever, but there's also about, "Oh, I love going there. I love getting this, whatever." Take off a list of stuff. They have created an emotional connection with you, and that's important. So it needs to be trustworthy. So just what I was talking about before is that the brand it builds credibility with the audience, but it's a kind of a push pull type thing. You can't go too far one way or the other. Yes, you can be adaptable, but you can't be so far out of your realm. And that's what makes a very interesting brand, with the emotional connection of your audience. And cohesiveness. So again, the clear, concise mission, values, and messaging all align. That's really important. So, there's a reason why the Nike swoosh is orange, and it's always orange, and you don't really, except for if it's on a shoe, but that's a different thing. But ultimately, they've got their consistency. When you see it, it's not written in a different font or anything, but at the same time, it goes down to way deeper than that, to just um, the connection that it has in everything that it does, how it talks to you. When you see an ad, before you even see who it's going to be, you have a very good feel of who it is. Apple's another great example. Okay, so I just talked about brands everyone knows. So let's talk about community branding, okay? Because cities are not companies. So what exactly is community branding? Well, it serves a similar purpose, that it should reflect the identity and the essence of a city. And it will provide guidance and direction for its growth and development. So, similar to a brand that you guys know with regards to a commercial brand, community branding will do a similar thing, is that when we know what our DNA is, when we know what what we're about, it will help set guidance. It will help set direction. It will help set priorities. So who are the customers, because I've been kind of talking about this before. Well, in this case, it's the residents and future residents, businesses, both existing and future businesses, and visitors, tourists. Because again, all these people are interacting with the city, right? So you want them to have a consistent message. You look at it from an economic development point of view, you can see that businesses are obviously economic development, and so is tourism, along with, of course, increased residents, um, along with our current ones. Okay, so why is community branding important? So it's important to increase visibility, promote tourism, and attract new businesses, because it helps establish a unique identity and creates a positive image. And I mean, that's important. So when you kind of go on, when you want to research a town that you want to go visit, for instance, you're like, "Oh, what's this town all about?" Like, let's say you're going to go on vacation or whatever. You usually go and you try to find it. You might go to their website, you might read some reviews or whatever. You're looking for a thread that's going to be an emotional connection back to why you would want to maybe visit there, why people live there, for instance, what makes it interesting, and what's its DNA all about. So, a well-defined community brand can attract new businesses, which is important. So, okay, we have a bunch of land. It's industrial land. And so people, we're in the Economic Development Committee and we're kind of going, oh, we need a video to show this great land. And, it would be awesome just because we have all this land and whatever, and it's, big ready. But um, businesses can be formed uh, or go to a certain area from just an emotional connection point of view. So I'm part of Built Oregon, which is a incubator for small business, um, mostly in the outdoor and athletic industry. And I was talking, we had our event a couple months ago, and this guy said, "Yeah, we're about 2.5 million. We got 30 employees. We're going to be about 100 employees in the next 2 years, and we're moving to Hood River." And I said, "Why?" Because it's going to be a lot harder to get to the airport. You're going to have trouble. Things are going to be a little more expensive out there. You're going to may have trouble finding people. He's like, "I don't care. I love to mountain bike." And I hear that story all the time about how businesses have some sort of emotional connection, emotional attraction to an area that may have nothing to do with the fact that, oh, it's the best possible place to put a business. It could be many different things. And that's where branding is so important. So, for instance, if Scappoose was going to brand in a certain way, you might be attracting somebody for reasons that you would, oh, we've got, amazing access to the river here. And I love to kayak. And I knew that. And now I'm coming here all the time to kayak. And next thing you know, you're thinking about where you're going to maybe put a business. And these kind of things are important. And it's kind of the things that you don't really think about a lot when you're thinking about branding or a logo or, slogan or whatever. Attracting tourists. So tourism is something that many towns feel is a very strong economic driver. And it's something that can really help with branding. So branding can really help with. So for instance, if your branding is about what I just talked about, how easy it is to get to a kayak launch, or how easy it is to go on a run at the CZ Trail. Tourists might come for a day, and that's going to help businesses, of course. But as they come more and more, again, they might decide either to live here or they might decide to establish a business here. Strong branding can build community pride, establish credibility with potential investors, and help stand out from the competition. And you go, oh, are we really in competition with other places? And yeah, in some ways we are. I mean, every town is to a certain extent. We're in the Economic Development Committee. We're going, how can we get a hotel here? Well, one of the reasons is that we don't have a lot of tourism, or one of the reasons is that another market might look more attractive. So it is about competition. And then ultimately, it can help define priorities. So a strong brand can provide guidance for resource allocation and give direction on how communities plan for the future. So for instance, if a community branded around recreation, for instance, because that is one of the things that they had as a resource, then a community might decide to put more resources in this way, and that might be their differentiation point. But there's lots of different differentiate points. And I'm not saying that Scappoose would do that, but what I mean is that the branding itself can help define your direction. Okay, so this is kind of an interesting slide. Basically, so when I talked about Phil Knight going, oh yeah, we're going to call it Dimension 6, he didn't have to worry about millions of people that were already using his products, and that's the difference between starting a brand scratch or a city that already has thousands of citizens. So they need to be part of the process. The last thing you want to do is have like a branding thing just slap on, here's our new brand, Scappoose. It's going to be a Circle S with this slogan. It's going to say we're all about whatever. That would go over not so well. It would be probably a complete waste of time because the citizens really need to drive the process. The second part of it is economic development. So how the brand is defined you really need an economic nod to it because economic development branding is marketing, and you're marketing to tourists. You are marketing to businesses. You are marketing to potential new residents. So what brand vision would be most bang for the buck in regards to economic development? So it's a kind of a push-pull type thing. And then ultimately, it's like, what direction do citizens want to go as well? Because, we have over 100 years of this town, and you can't push in something that is not where citizens believe their heart is. So ultimately, hopefully, though, over time, the brand vision would actually help citizens define who their town are all about. So when you have the elevator conversation, you could say, I live in Scappoose and we're about this, and this is why it's a great place to live. Hopefully the brand vision would help drive economic development over time because it's a strong brand and it's creating emotional connections. So the citizen engagement thing. So I really wanted to go just to talk about this real quick because it's really important to involve citizens in the process. So of course, seeking input is really important, but it's not just as simple as, we've done some really good things with the 50-year plan and others, asking questions, but it really needs to be, citizens have to be part of the process. So throughout the entire process, citizens can't feel like things were just dropped on them. Another one is that highlighting benefit for residents. So for instance, I've talked to people like, I don't know, maybe the mayor saying, why would I want, why do we need tourism? We love our town and, well, maybe tourism is going to help maybe create more amenities over time or create more economic development or help create a downtown core, which would then create more restaurants, which would be better for the citizens. So again, it has to be a very open conversation as to why you're doing branding and why and how you're engaging the citizens. You want to address concerns and objections throughout the whole process because you're going to hear them. Why are we doing this? We don't need to do this. Waste of money, waste of time. And you hear that about many things, which I can't, which are funny sometimes on social media. Of course, you need a complete engagement with the community leaders and influencers like yourselves, and then just really open communication. So I'm not going to go into the branding process here. That's not what I'm here for. But I wanted to talk about the citizen engagement portion because I think sometimes it's overlooked because again, sometimes people think that we can get a graphic designer in and we can create this thing and we're going to have all new fonts and logos and we're going to be branded, which is not the case. So I'm just going to finish up here and then I'm open for any questions. I wanted to keep it short. So again, it's an important tool to attract visitors, businesses, and investment while fostering community pride and engagement, and will provide direction and guide priorities on how the city plans for the future. So this is what I gave to the Economic Development Committee, and I was asked to present again. And if I bored some of you, because I think almost half of you were there at the Economic Development Committee, thank you. But ultimately, it's a very important process that I feel Scappoose is really ready for. And at this point, if anyone has any questions.
People. One I have I agree with the citizens engagement. I don't know if I read it or if I'm making it up, but 40% of our residents have been here over 30 years. I mean, there's a lot of us that have been here a long time, but there's also 60% that haven't. There's a lot of new people. What are they coming to town for? Why did they come here? What did they think about Scappoose and got them here? And also the people that have been here forever, what keeps them here? Why did they want to raise their family here and stay here and then their kids stay here as well? So I think it is very important to get community engagement on that for sure. No, I appreciate it. I think we have tasks. It has been one of our goals, our council goals, to work on this. So I think staff has been kind of tasked to continue working on this. And so I think it's gonna, there'll be some processes involved. And it will be interesting to hear from you, like what you think the next steps are. I mean, we'll talk to staff too, but I think we're definitely working towards an exercise or a branding exercise. Questions?
I guess, just quickly, can you offer a few examples of communities that you think have branded themselves really well in Oregon and what some of the benefits have been over time?
Yeah, I think the biggest is Sandy, Gateway to Mount Hood. Over the last 20 years, they've completely changed the feel of their town. And I think you can feel it through not just tourists or people that are going through, but the people that live there. And they created a DNA around a mountain town, even though they're quite far from the mountain, miles wise. And then they used that to resonate through everything that they do. They created a visual plan that for urban renewal. They gave incentives for buildings to turn into a certain style. They actually call it Sandy style. They actually have a plan that businesses can get outdoor seating that have an alpine look, and they'll get money for that. For people driving through, that they can see that there's activity going on, and if you have your bike with you, you can park outside and see your bike while you're having a sandwich or whatever. I think that's one of the greatest examples um, of something that's very close. It's just almost the same size as us, a little bigger, and same distance away from Portland.
Seen quite a bit of changes in Bend over the years too on their direction and focus.
I was surprised when I went through Troutdale, what they've done there. It's very impressive.
Right. Gateway to the Gorge.
East side obviously has done a lot over the years, but you know, they do have the ocean right there, which helps. We will someday. It'll be right on our. Be right there someday.
You're in charge of that.
I appreciate it. Thank you, Paul.
Thank you, Paul. Well done.
Okay, moving on. Wanted to welcome an update from the Columbia County Sheriff, Brian Pixley. Come out. Thank you for coming out on date night. Place to be.
Thank you guys for having me out tonight. I appreciate it. So the reason I'm here is I'm sure you guys may or may not be aware, but there's a sheriff's office levy on the ballot in the spring. So I just want to kind of talk to you guys a little bit about that. Over the course of my 20-year law enforcement career here in Columbia County, the sheriff's office has been consistently underfunded and understaffed. For all the Columbia County residents, what that means is slower response times, spotty patrol coverage, and a completely reactive police force. Roughly half the population of Columbia County resides within city limits. And within those city limits, there's 40 police officer FTEs to cover that half of the population. The other half of the population lives in the unincorporated areas of Columbia County. We're patrolled by just 12 sheriff's office employees or deputies. And that's not including over 60 miles of Columbia River shoreline. That's kind of a comparison. The busiest city in our county averages about 634 calls for service per officer per year. The Columbia County Sheriff's Office deputies average over 1,600 calls for service per deputy per year. This is too much to ask of our staff, and we're really kind of hitting a tipping point. I'm asking the citizens of Columbia County to help me make our community a better place to live, work, and recreate by entrusting us with additional funds needed for additional staff. Sheriff's Office patrol levy would fund 7 additional deputies, including all roll-up costs, all equipment costs. Once hired and trained, these 7 deputies would immediately increase community safety and deputy safety by having faster response times, better coverage, and backup during tense situations. Residents would also see the following effects: 24-hour, 7-day per week coverage. Response times to incidents would be reduced. Deputies would be available to back up other deputies on higher priority calls. Greater patrol presence, which I'm sure all of you know, more deputies patrolling our streets equal a more visible sense of community safety. Additional man hours to commit to active investigations and to follow up on already open cases. Added safety for our city officers in the form of more readily available backup and the ability to have a law enforcement response inside city limits when there's no one on duty or available. It would also help us improve the training of our deputies, reduce the individual call load of each deputy by about 600 calls for service per year, which is pretty significant. It also help us reduce our overtime costs because of callouts when no one's on. Currently, we're spending about $72,000 per year just in calling out deputies for priority calls when no one's available. This ask is quickly becoming a necessity as local police departments are putting more work on the sheriff's office. For the past few years, St. Helens PD has already withdrawn from providing most cover requests outside of the city limits unless someone's life is in peril. Several city agencies are struggling with staffing, so the sheriff's office fills in those holes. My deputies actively patrol those areas and help cover calls when no one's available. Sheriff's office has maximized the output of our enforcement division without compromising the enforcement deputies or our commitment to our communities. At this point, the only additional improvement to service and public safety can come from adding additional enforcement staff. We're seeking 29 cents per thousand. So for a home valued at $400,000, this would cost the homeowner $116 per year. It's less than $10 per month. Just last week, the Board of County Commissioners signed a resolution dedicating any funds raised by the levy for strictly patrol services. They will continue to fund the sheriff's office at its current general fund level. This resolution ensures that the funds raised in this levy will be dedicated to directly improving law enforcement services to the residents of Columbia County. You need the best sense of security that we can realistically provide. You need to know that your families and your property are safe. Business owners need to know that their investment in Columbia County is safe and secure, and that their employees and their families are taken care of by the services that we all provide. To do this, we need additional funding. So I'm asking everyone to vote yes on Measure 5290 in May to help support 24/7 law enforcement coverage for Columbia County. If you guys have any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer them.
Well, I'd just like to say I appreciate all you guys are doing because I know you guys, you're stretched really, really thin. And it seems to me we've done similar things and they failed. And I was always surprised that they failed. And you have an idea what is, what do we have to do differently this time? I know you haven't done it on your watch, but previous sheriffs have tried it.
I think that personally, I think what the issue is people are already stretched thin, especially with the job market and everything else. They struggle to afford the taxes that they currently pay. So adding any additional taxes to that can be a burden. I think it's a matter of managing priorities. I've always been a proponent of we need to increase our tax base here in Columbia County, but I think we're going to be hard pressed to do that until we get back to the basics. The law enforcement, fire, medical, schools, that sort of thing. That's what's I think, going to bring people in.
Thank you. Councilor Santiago.
So you know exactly how many, because we're all obviously short personnel on enforcement. So do you know how many how many are you seeking? You're seeking for funding, but how many FTEs?
7.
Seven. And you already spent 72 on contract calls. Would that cover one FTE?
No, that's on call out services for when people aren't available. That is one FTE was probably more than $72,000.
Yes. You.
Mayor. First, I want to thank Annette for letting Sheriff Pixley be here on his birthday. Yes, Brian, happy birthday.
Thank you.
Had to point that out there. Did I hear correctly that this is Measure 529, or did I?
5290. Yes, 5290.
529. Okay. So this, and I apologize if you said it, this is a 4-year option levy, correct?
Correct. Yes, sir.
Okay. So what happens, or what is your concept after 4 years?
So my whole goal for seeking this and turning it into a 4-year option levy instead of a permanent taxing district is this is going to be proof of concept. I want to get this passed and have the citizens of Columbia County see what we can do with their money when we're entrusted with it. So at the end of 4 years, my goal is to ensure that we give the residents more bang for their buck, and they'll see this need and vote it in again.
Thank you. So this is kind of like a proof of concept period for 4 years, and then basically like let the sheriff's office show the public what they can provide with the money that they're asking for and the money the public's paying. Okay, thank you. Frank, I'm going to ask you a couple questions about just things that I've heard come up. Just there's an opportunity on the record to respond to those. I know from firsthand experience that OSP used to be more present, in lack of a better term, in Columbia County, and that those troopers provided cover for the deputies. Can you talk a little bit about that and what's changed over the years?
So over my 20 years I've been in law enforcement here in Columbia County, the OSP staffing levels have dropped dramatically, whether that's from budget cuts or just from the same struggles that we all have to deal with. And Columbia County is no different. We actually almost lost our OSP satellite office out here a couple of years ago. And they would have been responding from Portland or from Astoria due to funding. Currently, I believe OSP is off duty between 10 o'clock at night and midnight. And the deputies will help cover those calls unless there's a major call, a traffic fatality or something like that, then they'll call someone in. But other than that, it's really kind of the deputies are stepping in and take those calls as well.
Thank you. So I want to bring this back. I heard everything, and I know firsthand how important it is to have deputies in the county and the unincorporated areas of Columbia County. But for the purposes of this conversation with the relevance to the city of Scappoose, I want to kind of bring the conversation to how this benefits the city and why this would be important to us as city councilors. One thing that I know, and of course, please comment on this, is that crime doesn't know boundaries. Cadillac converter thefts, things of that nature. What happens in the county comes into the city. What happens in the city goes out into the county. And so with more deputies, obviously, it's going to, give the opportunity for proactive patrol and be able to stop those things potentially even before they happen. The other thing that I have noticed repeatedly too is that Columbia County is severely strapped for law enforcement. So I hear these comments about, well, we have city police officers, so why do we care? Why are we going to why are we going to vote for this tax? And the answer to me is very simple. It is that even if the Scappoose Police Department is fully staffed, even if the St. Helens Police Department is fully staffed, or any of the other municipal law enforcement agencies in our county, we still do not have enough police officers. So basically, every call that involves a suspect contact requires 2 officers. So if St. Helens only has 2 officers on, another priority call comes in, what happens? What happens for our city when we have 2 officers that are on a domestic violence call? That's a 2-officer response. Another one comes out. It happens all the time. The sheriff's office routinely comes out and they help us. And I listen to the radio, so I know that they constantly provide support to the city and to the other city police departments. So all I'm trying to say by this, and Brian, I'm sorry not to do all the talking here. I'm gonna give the mic back to you in a minute. I promise. But I just want to make it very clear that what the city does, what the cities do receive from this, is the law enforcement services are closer law enforcement services to what is actually needed, and also the safety to our officers too. As liability and scrutiny of police goes up or continues to go up too, that also continuously relates to the number of officers that we have on calls, so that those calls are dealt with and the suspects are dealt with in a safer manner. And that means less use of force is what that equates to on a regular basis. So I support this measure personally. I think that as part of our job as elected officials is what could be more important than public safety. So my question is to you is to please correct anything that I said that is not accurate, and please feel free to add on to it. But also I'd like to hear from you of what this city council can consider doing to support Measure 529. Thank you.
So kind of to I guess enhance what you're talking about a little bit, you're correct. When city agencies are busy or not when they're responding to their own city calls or they have no one on duty, the sheriff's office does step in to fill that line and to fill those holes, and we do that routinely. We currently have, we're lucky, 2 deputies on duty for 657 square miles of the county. What this 7 deputies would allow us to do is go to more of a district concept throughout those busy times. So we'll have deputies stationed in each of the major areas of Columbia County to help enhance that shorter response time. This will also help us be there for city officers. We know for the past 10 years, there's been a few attacks on police officers throughout the years. And having more deputies available, more officers available would have made a difference in that. Like Councilor Miller said, a lot of what we do is we show up in force sometimes, and that de-escalates that use of force, that negates the severity of that use of force oftentimes. And this is only beneficial for county residents and city residents. Our job in the county is to try to stop the crime before it comes into the city. We can't do that when we don't have enough bodies to do that. And to answer your question, sir, really what would be helpful, and if you guys would be willing to entertain a resolution pledging your support for the measure. That's I think what I'm asking for today. I appreciate your guys' time to let me come in here and rattle your boxes a little bit and be talking head. So thank you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mayor,
Yes.
so if I can take the temperature a little bit on supporting a resolution by council, and basically the resolution would just be in support of Measure 529 for the sheriff's office. And if there is a general consensus that that's something that council would like to support, we can bring it on the next council meeting and have further discussion on it. But first, I just want to see if there's any interest in doing that first.
I think certainly I'm interested in doing that. I think it's a necessary thing that we support the county sheriff's department, and they've been your staff for a long, long time. And I think it's time they're not going to be overstaffed with these 7 officers. They're going to be just barely making it. So I would like to see us support them in any way we can.
Would be in support of looking at a resolution and discussing it.
I would as well, and I think it's certainly in line with the feedback that we got from citizens during the campaign process that public safety is a top priority, so.
I would like to, if you can, I can set up in a meeting with you, Sheriff Pixley, because I really want to know a little bit more. Not that I'm supportive of it. It's just I would like to know the seven full-time officers. What is the money going to, obviously for salary, but training and all of that, is that going to cost? So
Yeah.
what type of training?
So the ask is the 29 cents per thousand would be complete roll-up costs, salary, benefits, vehicles, training. And the training level really depends on who we're able to attract, whether that's laterals, which we can get up and running typically in less than 4 or 5 months, or a recruit deputy, which has to go to the academy. Currently, we can hire a deputy you guys can hire a city police officer in January. Realistically, they're not going to the basic academy until August or September. So it's kind of level of training dependent on the level of people we're able to attract. I'm more than happy to give you my business card so you can reach out to me. We can get together.
Thank you.
Yeah, Peter.
Just as a reminder, the viewpoint neutrality rules for city staff, because this is on the ballot in May, are in effect. You as electeds, of course, can engage in whatever advocacy you would like, including a resolution, but you'll actually have to prepare it yourself. And then there's no problem with Susan typing that it's on the agenda. There's no problem with keeping minutes, but the Secretary of State's office draws a bright line at preparation of something supporting on an election season.
Thank you.
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
And I don't know if anyone really has the answer, but we can have as much money as we need to hire whomever we'd like, but they're just not coming. And we're not able to, be fully stocked because there just aren't bodies filling those positions. So if you go through, and I'm not saying I'm not in support of this, I mean, like, how do we fix this sort of broken system of putting incentives out there and working on retention, and they still don't come?
The one benefit I have at the sheriff's office that city agencies don't is I have a jail full of people who sometimes want to transfer over. That kind of gives me a kind of a built-in hiring pool that I can bring in, and I already have work history. I know what kind of worker they are, if they're likely to be successful on the street. That's one thing I have over the city agencies,
You're
which-
so much luckier than we.
which I have drawn from many times. And then we backfill in the jail, which tends to be easier because there's not the commitment. You know, currently, in order to get a recruit police officer, deputy sheriff up and running, you're talking about a year and a half before they're even on their own. Then you're talking another couple years before they're even comfortable in their own boots.
Into the choir.
So I guess the answer is I don't know long term. I think what we need to do is, one thing we've been lucky here in Columbia County is our communities have been very supportive of public safety and law enforcement. But the state as a whole, it seems like, at least the noisy part of the state, has not been. And that's where the State Sheriff's Association and the Chiefs of Police Association has been working together to try to combat that stuff as much as we can. Because that's really kind of where it needs to start. The officers need to feel supported by the surrounding communities and by their state. Once that happens, I think that's going to open up a few more doors. And I think we're heading in that direction now.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Sure. Thank you. Once again, if you guys have any questions, please shoot me an email, give me a call.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Moving on to new business. We got a contract for the Dutch Canyon Production Well number 2023-05. Assistant to Public Works Director Hugh Whitehouse. Any information you'd like to provide?
Mayor, council, thank you. Again, this is a pretty standard contract approval. Just to refresh your memory, the Dutch Canyon Well 3 project is an ARPA-funded project. Currently at the drilling phase, this contract will be for drilling the well. You approved the engineering contract, which will be based off of the information and data that the drilling team pulls from their work. And then after that, we will go to final construction for the well, and it will result in a well producing water for the city's residents. We received 2 bids for that project. The first from Carpenter Drilling for $493,000. The low bid was Jensen Drilling Company at $337,000. And as such, the city's hydrogeologist of record and city staff recommends contracting with Jensen Drilling.
Questions? Sir Santiago?
I'm curious, it's like 150,000 or more difference and I'm sure you guys, they're not just responsive, but responsible as well of able to do this job.
Yes. We haven't worked with Jensen Drilling before per se, but I do know on this specific project, we were expecting a 3rd bid. They backed out close to the close. They just couldn't make it work with their construction schedule. So particularly well drillers are in short supply right now. A lot of the ARPA dollars were specific to water and wastewater infrastructure. So we're also competing with other small communities for that same contractor and consultant labor.
Just knowing that that's a huge difference.
Yeah, no, it's a good question. Again, I can't get inside the head of the contractor who bid that. I'm sure there's a reason that could be drawn. Something to do with market conditions.
Well, did you receive any protests from the?
No, although the protest period, and I'm glad you mentioned that, the protest period is open until tomorrow. We haven't received any protests yet, but at all. But this will expire around middle of tomorrow.
Just like Councilor Santiago was saying, can a drilling company see that difference and protest on that amount? I was like, how can it be that? Can they question that difference? How can they have quoted the exact same job for so much difference? That's not a protest.
As far, and Alex, if you want to take it away.
No, I'm pretty sure, based on my recollection, the protest process is really for aggrieved bidders to say that, I should have been awarded this, and this is why I should have been awarded it on. And they would actually have to lay it out and have been able to show that they could have taken that on if they had, quote, won the bid. So there's pretty specific parameters around those protests. I mean, I suppose they could come in and say, well, there's no way they can do that job for that amount, and here's why, I guess. But you really have to demonstrate that, you could have been awarded that if not for, and then explain why. So.
Where I've seen bid protests is where competitors been disqualified. So for a technical reason, like maybe there was a sub that they didn't list on the job. And so another one will say, well, they didn't list their subs, so throw it out. Or it's generally things of that nature where there'll be a technical mistake or there'll be an ambiguous term. And so that'll be the reason that a city goes with someone other than the low bid. And then it's generally the low bidder who protests and says it's conformed with process. I should have gotten the contract.
To clarify, so they are going to, the amount of 300 something thousand is for the whole scope of work.
Yes.
Yes.
The whole, this scope of work for drilling
Okay.
a production well.
All right. Thank you.
Okay, I'm looking for then a motion to accept.
Mr. Mayor, I move that council authorize city mayor Raines to enter the city into a contract with Jensen Drilling Company for the Dutch Canyon Production Well project following conclusion of the protest period on March 21st.
You, Councilor McHugh, I have a motion and a second. Anybody? Second by Councilor Santiago. Discussion.
Just consider ourselves lucky that someone out there is willing to do
Yeah,
it
they're-
for a lot less money.
Gonna ask,
Yeah, at least we got two bids. Yeah.
yeah, was that within our budget? That
Yeah.
amount was what we?
Yes. Actually, been right about where we were expecting.
Okay, all those in favor, state by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. So, we need to make a motion to authorize you to, what that motion was for.
Yeah, we're good.
Good.
You're good.
Okay, moving on to attorney services contract, city manager Alexander Raines.
Yes, Mayor and Council. So following the last meeting where we discussed your current attorney contracts, I went back to our legal team and Mr. Watts has declined to move forward with the city. So the circumstances have changed. So I thought it was best to come back and just simply check in with you all to see how you wanted to move forward. So you have some options before you. We have Barry Elsner that is willing, obviously, to stay on providing personnel services just like they were. That is still very much an option for us to keep that contract going. But now you can also consider that, you can look at Barry Elsner as a firm where you could expand services and take them on for general counsel as well. Or you can go ahead and you could go out for general counsel services or all services. Either way, Barry Elsner said they would cover us through the transition while after Peter leaves. So again, I just wanted to check in with you all since circumstances have changed and see what your preference is moving forward. Then I did pass out a little bit of additional research. We didn't get everything back, but just some general information from you on other cities that are similar to us in size, kind of what they're doing with respect to the duration of their contracts with legal teams, who they contract with, and some prices if we could get it. So that's in there as well.
Thank you, Councilor Santiago.
So I just want to know, may I ask Peter why you didn't want to agree to, when we last met, it was, I think we all agreed that we were gonna do the RFP later on. It was gonna give some time and you agreed to stay on. So I'm just wondering if there's anything that's changed from now and then.
No, I had agreed to stay on through the period when you did an RFP. So we had never discussed whether I was willing to extend the contract. And frankly, I didn't want to say anything that might influence your decision, one way or the other. but no, that I had never indicated I was willing to extend. Other than to help you guys get through an RFP process. How you just
Councilor Miller? Oh,
I'm sorry, I think that Megan was ready to go there.
Okay.
Okay. So I do want to clarify something. So if we decide, if council decides this evening or whenever that we do want to go out for an RFP for legal services, that's probably going to take 60 to 90 days. What's
3
your,
months, usually start to finish.
okay. So obviously we don't have 60 to 90 days left on general counsel's contract. So my question is Peter, are you saying that you would not be willing to
So,
work through that RFP process or?
so I mean, we could certainly talk about that. I have spoken with Barry Elsner. They'd be willing to cover us through the RFP process if Peter wants to conclude April 16th at the termination of his contract. If he wants to stay on beyond that, that's something we could talk about, but Barry Elsner would cover us if he doesn't want to.
Okay, well, I guess I get that part. That was clear in the documentation there, but my question specifically is if Peter's willing to do it, because we have a lot of things in motion that he's already familiar with. So what's going to happen is there's going to be billable hours for just catching somebody up, which is not going to be financially incentive for the city. So I'm concerned about that part. And if we can mitigate that, that's what the point of my question is. And then the other part is how are we going to continue to handle the LUBA appeal?
So Peter has agreed to stay on just for that, through the conclusion of that period. So he said he would keep that piece. We've already talked about what that, kind of a maximum amount of money he thinks that might cost for him to handle that piece because it is so complicated. So he will be finishing that for us regardless. With respect to the rest of it, yes, it's going to cost money to bring new people up to speed, no matter what. If there's new people on board, we're spending money bringing them up to speed. That's why a lot of cities actually don't renew their contracts on a very regular basis because it takes so much time and effort and cost getting people up to speed.
Okay, so then on the LUBA appeal, I want to make sure that we're very clear on this. So, and what Peter's offering is very clear. So Peter's offer is to say on board to the completion.
No. So
So
what I had said, what I had said to Alex originally is that to the extent you guys wanted to go out for an RFP, I knew from when the discussion was that it wouldn't be complete by the end of my contract, which is mid-month next month. So that I was and still am willing to, if that's the route you want to go down, then I'm not going to leave you guys in the lurch. And Barry Elsner is a very good law firm, and there's no reason for me to think that they wouldn't be competitive and get an RFP. But knowing that that might be the ultimate outcome, them getting up to speed on this stuff, I mean, it would be, and if you guys were to go with somebody else, I mean, you would then be doubling kind of that cost, and I wouldn't want you to have to incur that. With the LUBA case, we're in the middle of record. They did record objections. We filed our pleadings. They filed a response to pleadings. We're probably going to have oral argument on that. And after that, they're going to have to do the briefing. We're going to have to do the I'm going to have to do the briefing, the royal we, me, myself, and I. And then oral argument. So if that oral argument results in, and again, I would not feel good about the cost of trying to bring somebody up to speed on a case of this complexity at this point. I would not do that to you guys. So if we win at LUBA, which always is my hope, I like winning, then we would be done. If it gets remanded on a narrow legal issue, then that's the point where it would make sense for the new attorney to, and I would help them get up to speed, but they'd want to take it at that point in case there's a subsequent LUBA appeal. So that's why when Alex and I took a look at it, that's why I told her that I would be willing to.
that period of when, if it got remanded, is that in less than 3 months? Or we,
Well, so because we haven't been able to resolve the record objection, Um, and we're not going to be able to resolve the record objection. So basically, you had a packet in front of you in December that had 47 exhibits in it. And the other side said, the other side, meaning the appellant, said that that data should be in the record, but not in the record where it was, which was immediately after the staff report and before your decision. And I said, no, that's exactly where it would be because it was physically in a notebook in front of the former city councilors and posted on our website. So they do not recognize that that is the case. In fact, they're making an argument that the former council, when they adopted it, this is all, public record, this has all been filed with the courts, that when they adopted it, they didn't adopt the exhibits. I believe is their position. So, but when you look at what's in a LUBA record, it's physically the materials that are in front of the council, unless the council says we are excluding these documents from the record for this purpose. So, but the problem is that we're not going to be able to have that. I've already made those arguments in the pleadings that I've filed. The applicant made arguments that this is not the time to have the conversation, which I believe is true and also kind of premature for them to make that argument, but they did. But they do what they do and I do what I do. But LUBA's going to have to hear it. They're going to have to make that determination about what's in the record. That hasn't been calendared yet, so I don't know when it is. After that, they have a couple of weeks once that's resolved, they have a couple of weeks to file their legal arguments as to the decision. We have a couple weeks to respond. And then at that point, oral argument will be scheduled. Again, that's usually within a couple of weeks. So we'd normally be talking about like a 2-month period. But with this record objection, I don't know what that's going to do to this. So that's a very short version of some very complex conversations that are going to be having.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
For the sake of the conversation this evening, I am in favor of keeping Barry Elsner and Hammond on for personnel and collective bargaining use. I don't think that's anything that we should be touching at this point in time. Because of the time that it does take to go out for an RFP and the variety of things that we have going on, I'm also in favor of having BEH extend a contract to us. So I would not like to go out for an RFP at this point in time and hold off until 2024.
Agree.
Counselor Holmes.
So is that an option that's outlined here? Because it looks in the staff report like if we were to extend the other half of general counsel services to BEH, we would need to do so for 2 or 3 years. That would be.
I think you can make that as a motion, but they may not accept it. If you're only trying to extend them this 9 months to a year. I mean, I think we can do that. I think we've got feeling that if they are going to extend services, they would like a longer term to be able to hire service staff. So is by offering them just another 9 months, do you feel that they would?
May I? Because I may have something that will, okay. So my reason for asking Peter if he would stay on until we got through the RFP process was because we do need some continuity here of service for the best interest of the city. My concern with BEH is we don't even know who the attorney would be. And we're basically saying we're going to go with a law firm that has X number of attorneys or doesn't, and we don't even know who the attorney is going to be. So I don't know about you guys, but I like to look into things a little bit, just like picking my doctor. This is a serious commitment if we're relying on legal services from any attorney. I would rather go out to RFP, but I do know that that is going to take some time. I'll leave it at that. That's my position on it. And I just really quick, I do want to say that I do fully support, we already made a decision to continue BH's contract on employment related, labor related matters. So that's, I don't see that as being on topic here. That's already been decided.
And I do actually have one question about that. If we are continuing with them for labor and personnel, but we're going out for general, can we extend with them for labor and personnel for longer than a year? Or was the thought that you would actually have an RFP now for general and an RFP in 9 months for personnel?
We had voted on originally for RFP for.
Right, and
both, I think, But
Right, but since that's changed, I just am wondering, can for continuity of service, for the sake of, just general knowledge of what's going on in staffing, could we extend that longer?
Mr. Mayor,
yes,
Peter, for a law firm to stay on with the city, I'm looking at other cities and seeing how it rolls, and a lot of their comments saying, we just don't want to go through, getting people up to speed. It's a lot of work on both ends. What is a reasonable amount of time? 3 years, 5 years, 2, 10?
I mean, with my other cities, my contracts are rolling. This was kind of a unique scenario in that the other cities that I work with, the contracts were in my former law firm's name and my name as well. So, Scappoose, I have been staffing Scappoose for a while, before I left Jordan Ramus, but you guys had, because your contract was structured differently, had to go out for an RFP. I was leasing office space from Barry Elsner, and they had experience working with your former city manager. And I think they had been doing your labor and employment. I guess that had been Baron Liebman, maybe. All right. So that's why and this was kind of the way that they structured their contracts, which was a 5-year with a series of renewals. So I did 5 years, and
Peter, if we did an RFP for council, are we gonna typically look for that 2 to 3 year period again? I mean, is that gonna be on the RFP timeframe?
well, I think that it does take a bit to get up to speed on what's going on in the cities. So I think it's unusual for cities to go out for a lot of legal RFPs unless there's an issue with the lawyer. So I think that
I guess I'm thinking that if you're going out for RFP and it's gonna be a 2 to 3 year contract, I don't have a problem extending the H 2 to 3 years. to
Sure,
match that same.
Yeah. I think what we're finding is that generally speaking, for a lot of cities, they aren't switching up their legal counsel every 3, 4, 5 years, again, unless there's a problem, just because of the costs and difficulty associated with onboarding new legal staff. So what we're finding more and more is just that that's simply not what other cities are doing. So, I mean, we can certainly look at that. But I can't sit here and say that I think it's the most efficient use of, resources and time if we're constantly onboarding new legal teams.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
I don't think it's a surprise to any of council based on the email that I sent after that meeting, but it was extremely disheartening to watch how it played out during that meeting, the conversation about Peter, and I apologized to him. It is very evident, or the perception is, that this council lacks any sort of faith or yeah, and I watch Peter, and it's like he gets second guessed every single meeting, but every single meeting, about 5 times we look to him for advice. And so I'm just sitting here, and I know I'm turning red and I'm getting flustered, but it's just so frustrating that we would, on one hand, say, oh, Peter, we appreciate your legal advice, and you don't have to show up to our meetings, and we actually don't pay you any extra to do it, but you do, and you come every time, and we ask you so many questions and we lean on you. But on the other hand, we don't think you're worthy enough to have a contract for more than so many years, and every 2 years you need to worry about losing your job with us. And I just think I empathize with him sitting in that chair and what he had to endure and hear back. He couldn't be in the room, but it's frustrating because I think we're acting like we're in a position of um, like some sort of, like we have some sort of ability to just get a really great lawyer whenever we want. Every couple of years, we just snap our fingers and we go through this process and we can get better and do better every time. But this isn't one of those realms of running a city that you really mess with too much. And so I think that we need to be cognizant of not only appreciating but respecting the person that takes that role by the process that we take in which to retain them and keep them. And I'm noticing that there's several cities that do that rolling sort of contract because you are entrusting them throughout this whole process to be a phone call away, to be able to stop at a meeting. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I've called Peter with some random, thing with the senior center, with Alex's permission, but to have that is valuable and we're losing it, and it's so sad that it's going to happen. But I think we can approach this in a way where we're going to get an attorney that wants to be here and doesn't feel like they're second guessed every time they are. I know that was kind of a soapbox, but I really feel like I needed to say some things, and I know that was emotional, and but I'm just really sad to see you leave, and that this was the point at which it needed to happen. And moving forward, hopefully as a council, we can really, not just think that this is just something that we have a lot of wiggle room with. Because it's a really serious role, and it's important that our staff can turn to someone um, that feels like, well, in 2 years, am I going to be here or not, right?
Yeah, I thank you for saying that. You know, I originally was brought into Scappoose because you were firing your attorney and going out for a legal RFP. And then you didn't, and kind of got through all that. And then I got pulled out of Scappoose and sent to Damascus, which was the one situation that I couldn't fix. Um, I've noticed a change here. I noticed that it came up during the Grabhorn Park process, which sometimes you can see a major issue kind of coming down the tracks, and we can build our record and we can do all the things that give us the best chance to defend it. And I just didn't see a park being controversial at all. Maybe that was naive, because since then I've had parks become controversial in um, other cities. Um, but the way that I was treated by members of the public during that process and subsequent to that, and just the amount that I felt like the city was accomplishing, like part of the reason that I do your legal work at a flat rate is because I enjoy the city and because Alex and I were getting a lot done, frankly. I mean, getting big grants and getting all sorts of stuff that I took a lot of personal pride in. Um, and I think that, we are professionals, but we're also human beings. And it's really hard to sit in a meeting and have members of, whether it's members of the public or whomever, you know, criticizing us for things that just simply aren't true. Like, I had never heard of David Weekly Homes before their application. I think I had talked to Garrett Stevenson on the phone once over a cut fill permit. I mean, that's the only time I can recall ever encountering him. And yet, I was getting forwarded emails suggesting, not just me, but Lori and Alex, suggesting we were getting paid off by the developer. That we were somehow in the bag. Which would really mean that we had no ethics, because ethical people would never do that, and we would all lose our license. And I think that, I have a former city councilor that would forward me emails that he wrote to other people, very critical of me, knowing that because he was represented by council, I could. And I think that at some point you just realize that it's not a lot of fun. And that if I wanted to defend, part of the reason that I stopped doing most private side land use was because defending 42 unit subdivisions is not fun. It's kind of soul sucking. And now I'm defending them at municipal rates, not even municipal rates, because they charge you guys a lot. Pretty technical land use litigation. But yeah, I think that I think that mutual respect is really important. And I think that we can't do anything about what members of the community say. But I think mutual respect between city council and staff, whether it's an attorney or city manager, planner, whomever, is really important. And it did really bother me that I was getting second guessed on subject matter where other agencies bring me in as an outside expert. So, I mean, the two areas where I get brought in are on highly technical land use matters and technical elections matters. And a lot of you don't know that because you don't. But yeah, you know, I hope the community can kind of get back to that, away from this. If the park looks like this, we will all write letters to the state of Oregon and ask you not be given grants, which actually happened during process. It's like, well, we don't like that, so we'll just write the state and you won't get a grant. And it's like, people here want a park. You know, they do, and it doesn't have to be everything that everyone wants. And you know, once the community gets into that mindset of you're with us 100% of the time, or you're our enemy, you really, the problem is opportunity cost, because that lack of trust means that people aren't going to come up with some new kind of idea, or aren't going to take a flyer on something because they'll get embarrassed. And yeah, I mean, it wasn't an easy decision not to extend the contract, but all my cities are super busy right now, and part of it was about capacity. And I've heard some crazy rumors. None of them are true. I'm quite fond of Counselor Miller. I mean, he's occasionally a pain, but I people
Admittedly,
that are like, oh, I'm like, no,
admittedly.
not at all. No. So there's not some grand plan for me and like your staff to like parachute into some new community. None of it's true. So it's and
I
hope
appreciate you
whoever the
very
next
much,
one is,
Peter.
that they don't have to deal with that.
Thank
So
you.
that's a long-winded, somewhat embarrassing reply.
Thank you. Counselor Santiago.
I hear you, Peter. Thank you. I appreciate it, everything you said and you've done. Personally, I don't know any rumors. I haven't any of those situations that you've talked about. Actually, the meeting that you're talking about, Councilor Greisen, I had a totally different experience. I wasn't at that meeting because I didn't hear it the same that you did, apparently. Um, for me, it was simply, hey, contract is up. Why can't we see our options? And everybody agreed. It has nothing to do with personal. I don't like Peter. I don't trust him. That's not where I was looking at it from. So I'm talking personally. And, it was nothing against you, Peter. I hope you didn't take it personally, but apparently there is some personal feelings here. But that's where I was coming from. I think that it should be open RFP options when given the options to see what is out there. My understanding, the last meeting we had this conversation, it was that you guys were okay. We put it out there for RFP. You guys were going to rebid or put in your proposal. So why not? I didn't see anything personal or bad mouthing him or whatever. Witch hunt.
Thank you. And I don't know why I'm caught up on the timeframes and years. I just kind of assumed that they had contracts for a certain amount of years, especially when we started. This was a 5-year contract. So I just kind of assumed that. The rolling one, I mean, that makes sense to me. It's just, like every year it's up. Do we just let it keep going? Yes. That makes more sense. So when I'm looking at these years, I don't know why I really keep coming back to that, other than I kind of thought that's what.
Yeah, Mayor, can I comment just on that really quick? So as somebody who responds to RFPs to government agencies, it takes a lot of work. And I bet Ashley in the back there and Peter can both attest to the fact of it takes hours to respond to an RFP. And that's usually money you don't recoup either. So as far as what I've seen in professional services contracts, it's usually at least 3 years, sometimes 5. So if this council is to entertain any sort of contract for legal services or whatever, I would encourage us to to have it be at least 3 years, 4 years or 5 years, but anything below 3 years really becomes inefficient and a waste of time. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes.
I would agree. I mean, in preparation of that discussion, which I will step back and say, I think that is a mischaracterization of how the conversation went. And I went back and watched the recording, and there were no personal attacks on Peter. It is our job to ask questions, and it is the case that our use of legal services is out of line with the amount of services utilized by other cities. And if we're looking at RFPs and costs of services, these are questions that have to be asked. So I apologize if anyone took personal offense to that line of questioning. That was the thinking. In preparation of that discussion, I did look at RFPs that had gone out for other cities, and I would say, yes, it's 3 to 4 years. I had expressed that 5 I felt personally uncomfortable with because that's longer than any of the terms that we personally have up here. So I would also be in agreement with going 3 to 4 years potentially on an RFP. But if we could also continue to look at what the trends are, right, for cities generally, I think that would help inform the direction that we take as well.
Okay. Sir, Q?
Just quickly, when I first came on board, City Manager Sykes said that Peter was the best attorney he's ever worked with. And I think, and I haven't always agreed, but I think Peter's probably always been right. And I really do appreciate the job he's done. He's very straightforward and I didn't feel there was any animosity looking for an RFP. I just thought it was probably at that time it was the right thing to do. But I just hope you didn't take that negatively on.
No,
my part.
I had already decided that I wasn't going to extend the contract for meeting. I mean, wasn't, I don't think going out for RFPs is a bad thing. I think that it's a good thing. And I don't think that, that I'm necessarily the right attorney for every council or that every council is the right council for me. I mean, so I was not offended. The reason I said what I said is because I want you to be cognizant, because I am a little bit concerned that, you could lose more staff, because staff don't like being attacked by members of the public. Their job is really hard. And harder when people are just lighting us up.
Thank you. And yeah, when I look back at that, when I was looking at extending you, at least for this year, so we could all get to meet you and know you, see your work, and then at the next time, who knows what, extend you more. Or at that time, I think we voted to go for an RFP, but that came up kind of last second. But everything you've helped me even a little before the election and everything after have been very good and get back to me right away. And I really appreciate working with you. But we have to make a decision here. We have enough information. Do we need to discuss more? I think obviously the 3 that we're looking at potentially the extend BH just for their labor for a certain amount of years and go out for RFP for general counsel. They don't accept that, then she can go out for RFP for both. Or we go to BH for everything for a certain amount of years, and if they don't agree, then go out to RFP. Or go ahead, Councilor. You.
Well, I just, there's some advantages to keeping it all together, you know. The disadvantage is we don't know would be taking Peter's spot. And is there a way we could find that, talk with somebody from their agency and see if they would be, you know, satisfactory? I know Ashley does a different kind of work for them, but I don't know, the gentleman that did our presentation 2 weeks ago was outstanding.
Might be assigned. So I'm Ashley Driscoll. I'm a partner at Barry Elsner and Hammond. It's me and Chad Jacobs are the two partners, and we have 6 attorneys and 2 staff working under us. I want to add my 2 cents to the term of the contract discussion that you were just having. Our position is that your relationship with your attorney is different than your relationship with any other contractor that you work with, that you should be able to choose which attorney you work with at any time. So I would say that you were probably our only contract that is on a term of any kind. The rest of our contracts are rolling because the client, which is the city council or the government entity that we work with, can at any time choose a different attorney because that is your right. Because who you get your legal advice from is a very important decision. So I'm not sure what RFPs you were pulling out with specific terms in them. That's not something that we have with any of our clients that I can think of. I've been in a partner now for about 4 years. So I do remember the discussion. I was not a partner when when we first brought Scappoose on. So I remember that this conversation was different regarding, our partnership with Peter and the term of the agreement. So I'd like to add that to the conversation. Like Peter, our firm is really busy. We have 8 attorneys who are at capacity, and absorbing another client is not impossible, but it is, would be challenging for us. We have learned our lesson by taking interim projects in the past, that those are really hard to adjust for because we have people that are working a lot of long hours that have a lot of experience. You take on a short-term project and it is taxing for that period of time. So as a current client, we would be more than willing to expand to include you in the general services, but it would be, mean that our senior attorneys would have to, step up and take a significant workload on until we could bring on somebody else to assist us. At this point, I can't tell you exactly who your lead attorney would be. I can tell you it would be somebody with significant municipal law experience. It would likely, I think Josh, let's call him a candidate. He is a candidate for this. I hope he's not listening because we haven't talked about that with him yet. But it would be somebody with mine or Josh's level of experience. And no, I can't tell you specifically who that is right now. We would have to have some discussions about how we would fit it in. That answers your question.
Me, I think we're just in a unique situation right now with timing and just trying to get it perfect, trying to figure out the best route. Any opinions or recommendations?
What I'm understanding is current law firm, they don't do RFPs. They just do link contracts, I guess. So an RFP would be out of the, you guys won't be responding to an RFP. So so I think our options have actually changed here, the ones that they're given. Seems like we either contract them for continue work with them for the year or 2. They said they would prefer 2 to 3. And then we just do an RFP or see if what type of attorney. I don't know what attorney, maybe we can talk to them or either the kind of work they've done. I'm not sure of the RFP process of what you guys were all looking for. Hire the Peter's position. So maybe it's not RFP, maybe it's, I don't know.
I have something I'd like to clarify really quick, and maybe Ashley or Peter knows this. Is the contracting rules the same with legal counsel so that we're supposed to go out for RFP if our annual limits exceed what is 150,000 for, I mean, I would hope that we're not going to, but how is that consideration worked into legal service contracts.
I mean, so there's one client I had that had a very unique charter that made the city attorney a city officer, which was not a good idea, and they could fire the city attorney for cause. But other than that, generally, my experience has been that you know, you're a little bit unique in that I want to do a flat fee, so Alex would have certainty. Um, but it's like you take as much time as you need or that we have to give you. And then I don't know what I can't anticipate what your legal issues are. Sure how costly that will be to do them. If there's a point where your bills are at a that they're outside of their realm of budget. I mean, I think that's probably a conversation you have with your attorney and talk about like what you really need versus like what. And if Barry Elsener doesn't have sufficient capacity, I think that's a conversation they would also have with you. Is like we can give you this, this, and this, but we can't under current staffing. We maybe can't staff planning commission meetings or whatever it is.
But do we have, is one of the options then to extend Barry Elsner definitely their services and go out for RFP for general counsel? Or just renewing their contract, but it's indefinite?
Well, I'm still unclear, Mayor, on Peter, are you willing to extend your time as general counsel during the time? If we were to start this RFP process right away, would you be willing to stay on while we finish that, so long as we do it at a reasonable time period, like 2-3 months, or is that just not really within your interest right now?
No, I'm willing to, if that's the route you want to go down, then I'm willing to do it. Just so you understand though, like I am having a lot of capacity issues just because all of my cities are incredibly busy right now. So, but yeah, I can suck it up for 2 to 3 months. But if that's the route you want to go down, or you can do the transition, mid-April.
And I'm actually not trying to encourage other counselors any which way. I'm just making sure that we have clarity on what our options are here.
If Peter does stay on, do we also have Barry Elsner as backup if it's, we can ask them questions as well from time to time, correct?
Right. Like my view of the contract always has been that you could use whoever you wanted. So if you wanted to use me, you could. If you wanted to use Barry Elsner, you could. An example of that would be like last Monday. Use Barry Elsner. That's fine. So I had never thought about it as a city attorney. Like I didn't do employment or labor negotiations, and that's actually his area of expertise. So, but yeah, I never viewed it as they do two things and I do everything else. I had always viewed it as you use whoever you want for whatever you wanted, understanding that I'm not comfortable doing the negotiations, which is what the conversation I had with Michael.
Then I would hope that on the LUBA, you would be able to negotiate if it does continue a couple months, some time for that until it hits that point where it's either done or a remand and can be handed over to.
Right, and that's Alex and I've already had that.
Yes.
Can we make a motion to go to RFP for general counsel services without defining the terms of the RFP tonight? Whether it's like.
Yeah, you wouldn't be defining any terms of the RFP. No.
At this time, we've made a motion to extend Barry Elsner this 1 year in RFP. So anything we make a motion that might change that, we can do that as well.
There's no, I thought that we already decided there's no discussion about changing the labor employment law side with Barry. We've already made a decision on that. I just want to make sure that we're clear and we don't muddy the waters here on what we're doing.
I'm asking if we do this, we're still obligated to what we voted last time. Barry Elsner's side of it.
That's a separate
Yeah.
motion, yeah.
Yeah, and my only question on that had been if we could extend that for longer, if we're gonna do an RFP. So as opposed to doing an RFP now and then an RFP and again in a year because you only extended Barry Elsner for a year. That's what I was asking to avoid.
That just said, Ashley just said that. They
She said they don't do RFPs. That doesn't mean we can't extend them.
Yeah, we can extend them. And if we're only keeping them for personnel, then they don't have to change capacity to do that.
So in 9 months, can we decide to extend them without going back for RFP?
Yeah, so my question is, can we just extend them beyond a year now? Because if you're going out for an RFP for general, it seems a little bit odd to go out for an RFP for general and then in 9 months be going out for another RFP for personnel.
And I personally don't mind extending Barry Elsner kind of indefinitely on that rolling period, and just, we're extending them. We get on that rolling cycle instead of extending them for a 2 or a 3-year period. That's my opinion.
Would that prevent us from getting into a situation where we can find services from a single law firm provider?
No, it would not.
Other advantages. Oh.
No, because you're paid on an hourly basis, right? So let's say you decide you want advice from somebody else, you just pay that other person. It doesn't stop you from doing that. Doesn't stop you from ending the contract at any point if you want to do that either. It doesn't, it doesn't lock you in forever. You're just talking about not doing essentially this, every few years coming and having this discussion essentially. It's more of, is there an issue here that you're trying to remedy?
Are we ready for a motion for sake of discussion? To move this discussion, I'm prepared to make a motion. Okay. Mr. Mayor, I move that council authorize staff to begin work on an RFP for general counsel. And that since our current city attorney, Peter Watts, has offered to stay on for a reasonable duration while we finish that RFP, that we continue with Mr. Watts's work. If the city manager needs to work with Mr. Watts on his fee, then I would also move the council, or excuse me, the city manager works with Mr. Watts on that and brings that back to council. I would also make a motion, it's a two-part motion basically, that we extend BEH's contract for labor and employment for 2 more years from the end of their contract in April.
Okay, I have a motion, Councilor Miller, to begin work on RFP for general counsel. City manager works with Peter Watts, determine a fee structure to him to continue work during the RFP process. And then second motion would be to extend Barry Elsner for 2 more years from the end of their contract in April.
Mr. Mayor, just real quick, I think I should probably abstain because of my relationship, Ashley.
That's fine. Do you want to abstain from both motions?
It's one motion.
Okay, one motion.
So I can
Block of parts.
we can kill the motion and we can do it in 2 parts if we need to.
That'll be one motion.
I mean, I think one motion's probably.
Yeah.
Did I state it at least properly? Record.
I think you're good, sir.
Do we have any seconds?
I'll go ahead and second that.
By Councilor Holmes. So we have a first and second. Begin work on an RFP with for general counsel. City manager works with Peter Watts. Fee structure for him to continue to work till the RFP is complete. And extend Barry Elsner 2 more years from the end of their current discussion.
I'm just wondering if, what kind of response are we going to get on an RFP? Is that it? Are we setting ourselves up for, failure? So I'm kind of concerned about that. Go ahead.
What I found is that frankly, I looked at all the cities in our range, our regular comparator cities. There's 8 to 12. All of them use either Peter Watts, Barry Elsner, or Jordan Ramus. If you ask me tonight what I expect maybe 1 or 2 proposals, probably from one of those entities. there's really not a lot of choice. I talked with recorders, I talked with the people that wrote the RFPs, and they got one, maybe two responses to their RFPs. There's just really not a lot of attorneys that do this work in our size of city range. And as you move up beyond us, you really get to the point where the amount of work really kind of dictates a lot of cities to go to a staff attorney because there's just so much work. Then below us, there's not really a whole lot of work, and so it's split over a lot of people. So I don't really expect a lot of choices to come back. I also am going to be honest with you in terms of price because I've been holding my tongue for a while. Two attorneys right now are probably the best prices in our 2,000 people either side of us. Right now, Jordan Ramus is looking at about $500 an hour for an increase to King City. Standard rates are well above what we get now. 100, 350 is pretty normal. So I just want to prepare you for, you know, when we get those RFPs back, I'm not a fortune teller, but it's kind of what I'm expecting. If we see a lot at all, which I don't.
There is an opportunity potential. I mean, Barry Elsner could respond to an RFP. You know, on one of these releases, it says they have received one from them, so could.
Well, and we do not have to accept any of the RFPs too. If we still like the option that's in front of us, then we can go with their, I mean, this is more of a.
Yes, you
To
can.
me, this is more of a check the box type thing to show due diligence. Miller Nash and Gable Houston also provide government services to attorneys, but they are the,
Those.
yeah. So, and you brought up a good point too, Isaac, is that we are smaller, so we're not, you know, if they're going to spend their time on a city with more significant billable hours, that's probably what they're going to do.
Market.
Yes.
Can we, this is my thinking, and I'm not always right. My thinking is that we should amend that motion to, before we go out for an RFP, to interview the available candidates from EH and see if they're, you know, to me, I'm not sure an RFP is a really best way to go because we've got attorneys that are working, they're successful, and I'm not sure what the pod is like that we'll be choosing from on RFPs, you know. So I'm wondering if we shouldn't start with seeing what's available through EH.
My only comment to that would be, I don't disagree, that's not a concept, Pete. My only issue would be is if we're going to be able to have Peter for that long, it doesn't, to me, what I get is that we don't have that long of a period that he's able to continue on. But again, I'm not, we have good options here, I guess, so I'm not impartial to, you know, any one of them. But.
So the question that I'm the queue is to see if Barry Elsner is interested in taking on our full services and explain how they expect to do, you know, plan to do that with the staffing. And at the same time, we still, if you don't use them, you don't pay for them, right? Because it's hourly. So we would keep Peter on as long as we can negotiate, as long as Alex can negotiate him on the specific cases.
I think things are getting
Okay.
really entangled here, but I'll leave you guys to, I've said my piece.
We have a motion and a second. Wanted to provide another motion.
Okay, I will amend the motion to the amendment flies to interview the available attorneys from VEH where we go to an RFP. I don't even have to say the RFP on there. We interview the available attorneys, VEH. Seems like that'd be a faster process than going through the RFP process.
Second,
Second option.
So Ashley, just so again, BH. So I'm trying to think through how this would work. I mean, we would be more than willing to come out here and, you know, do an introduction. You can meet the attorneys in our firm. We would have to have some discussion internally about who would be your primary contact. Give you a little insight into how our firm typically works is, we are structured like a full city attorney office. So we have 8 municipal attorneys. Each one does general government work, and then each one has an area of specialties. For instance, we have 3 land use attorneys, we have 2 labor and employment attorneys, we have a public record expert, Emily Matazar, who actually does a significant amount of work for you guys. So we have a primary and a secondary assigned to each one of our cities. The primary is the one that is the gatekeeper for your work. So that's the person that you would call. You call, you say, I have a public contracting question. We want to do an RFP. That would generally go to your contact, your primary contact. But if that person doesn't have that area of expertise or doesn't have the capacity to do it, it then gets sent to another attorney. So you don't just hire an attorney when you're hiring Barry Elsner and Hammond, you hire the firm. It is unusual for me to be out here and just doing your labor and employment. That's just a special relationship that we have. But even so, when I'm at capacity, I'm fielding it out to the other attorneys in our firm. So we've worked with Emily, worked with Heather. So that's how we generally structure. Because of some of the legal issues that have come through, frankly, because of some of the things that I've heard Peter say tonight, we would not assign somebody to be a primary contact out here that doesn't have significant experience working with councils. We only have one attorney in our office with less than 3 years of municipal law experience. So we can certainly, have you introduce the rest of the attorneys in our firm. But like as tonight or maybe even next week, I can't promise you who would be the primary, but it would be somebody with experience. And we'd be willing to do that. And you could do that while also, moving forward with your RFP.
So what I'm hearing is basically we have to do the RFP for the whole, all services. I'm hearing versus just council and then HO. So I guess if that's what we need to do, I'm for an RFP for the whole services. I mean, I get it, Ashley, you're right. That's makes sense.
Who used to work for you guys, didn't he? And he was our attorney during that whole process. And so, but
So
that
she
was
was,
unusual, right?
she was talking about having an attorney come and interview for the general counsel portion, not changing anything about personnel.
Right.
Yeah.
No,
Okay.
it made sense that normally it's not this case, it's someone in their law. If you call, you have an HR issue, you talk to the HR person. You have a land issue, you talk to the land attorney. So it would be an attorney, like a firm.
Yeah.
So I think that's what we need to do is seek out firms that would be able to support all of our needs. That's what I'm hearing.
We have a first and a second to extend Barry Elsner, but only go out for RFP for general counsel.
Right, unless you want to interview the team at Barry Elsner first.
And I would point out too, Ashley said you could do both at the same time.
Yeah.
Right,
It's
that's
not-
true
They're
too.
not mutually exclusive. You could start drafting an RFP at the same time we prepare this meet and greet, if you will. And you can offer
Yes.
them if you'd like to, I think.
Right.
Where'd that
Council
motion?
President Grayson.
Does BEH have the time or capacity to respond to an RFP?
So I can't promise that we would. Again, we are not in a position where we are seeking new work. We are at capacity, if not beyond it. But, we have a commitment to local government. We only represent local government. If you would like to stand, we will make it happen for you. It would require us to bring on additional staff. We just brought on one new client, and so probably would not.
Yes.
So I'm going to put my staff hat on for half a second here. Ashley and I and Alex are in constant contact. I mean, every week, multiple times a week. There's a big benefit functionally to having continuity between an attorney and a staff. There's a lot of issues that come up that are very complicated and have a long history. And the ability for us to react and take the right steps really relies on Ashley being able to call and have her know the backstory, know what's going on, what's been going on sometimes for years. And my staff hat makes me a little nervous to think about potentially having a new HR attorney because that's where cities run into a lot of problems. That said,
I agree with that, but I'm kind of thinking you might get that through the RFP process. Do our due diligence to see if we don't get the people we want to apply or any, then you can still visit this. But then we're taking a 3-month exercise that's gonna increase staff time and work, something that may not realize.
And correct me if I'm wrong, your original motion would address the concern that Isaac raised, having continuity with HR attorneys, correct?
I think Isaac's point was a little broader than that, but yes, at least on the HR front, yes, that continuity would stay because my motion did include extending Barry Elsner Hammond's, our relationship with Barry Elsner Hammond for labor and employment law for 2 years.
Okay, let's, we do have an amended motion from McHugh. Leave it on there.
Hasn't had a second.
Yeah, any seconds?
Okay, with the other, as long as we're on the same page of what we're doing. Don't want to make it more complicated and start over again after 3 months because we didn't satisfactory RFPs.
Keep them yours.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
can I just clarify? I would love to hear from Ashley on what your understanding this motion means and what you're able to provide.
Right. So what I understand the motion is that they're going to extend the labor and employment contract with me for 2, maybe 3. It's unclear whether it's 1 year beyond or 2 years total. And so that will basically continue my relationship with the city. We do, again, a big bunch of your public records work too. So I'd want to make sure that that was incorporated. And then you're going out for an RFP for general counsel work. And we're going to see how the response is. And if you find a firm or an individual that you're comfortable with, then you will likely go forward with them for general government work.
And if you do not respond to that RFP, then you don't become an option anymore. I just want to hear from you what you're
No,
willing
we
to.
we would always be an option for you. We're not going to leave a local government without an attorney. So, it just goes against sort of our position of assisting local government. So if you go out, you don't like your options, it's, not what you want, and you want to come back to us and say, okay, like, seeing what's out there, we'd like to, extend BEH for, enter into new contract with BEH, we would accommodate that because wouldn't leave you without an attorney.
Just wanted that to be fully out there. Thank you.
I think we do need to clarify the 2-3 year thing that Ashley brought up as well. So based on the previous discussion, my thought was since we already extended a year, it would be a total of 3 years beginning in April at the expiration of this coming contract. So it'd be a total of 3 years after that.
Oh, okay.
So when's their contract expire? April 16th, same as
Yeah,
what we
or
kinda said.
18th or something like, yeah.
3 years from that.
So 3 years from that. Okay.
date. More discussion? All those in favor, stay by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign.
Nay.
Carries. Okay. We have an executive session, but do I want to read all the calendar first? And then, we want to make a motion to extend the, meeting past 9 o'clock.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion, we extend our city council meeting past 9 PM.
Motion by Council Miller to extend the meeting past 9 PM. Second.
Second?
Second by Councilor Holmes. All in for discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Okay, thank you. Calendar, April, we're almost into April. March 28th, we have a 50-year SAC meeting, 6 PM. April 3rd, a council work session at 6 PM, followed by council meeting at 7 PM. April 13th, Planning Commission at 7 PM. 17th, Urban Renewal Agency, 6 PM Then council meeting at 7 PM, April 20th, an EDC meeting at noon, Parks and Rec Committee meeting at 6 PM, April 28th, 50-year SAC meeting at 6 PM, and April 27th, Planning Commission, 7 PM. There is a town meeting on April 8th. Oh. I missed on there. Okay, any updates?
Mayor and council, I know that there's been some recent discussion about the timing of your meetings and trying to keep them to 9 o'clock. So I've been looking at some what other cities are doing, and one of the things I've noticed it's pretty common is that in their consent agenda, they're actually adding a lot more items to it. So routine items like contract approvals and sometimes simple resolutions get put in the consent agenda. It doesn't change your packets. You still get all the same information. You just simply don't have it up for a topic of discussion. And if for whatever reason anyone on council wants to discuss it, they can drop it into the regular body of the meeting. However, if there is no desired discussion, it shortens things up because you can approve several things at once. So it's just an idea to shorten things up. If that's something that you're interested in, the mayor and I can look at doing that for our future agenda and you can see how it works. And then the final thing was I had sent out a follow-up email after the work session on the stormwater master plan because there had been a comment about quote, a double taxation. And there had been a request that I repeat that explanation here. Just simply making the comment that there are people that live within city limits and also within the limits of the drainage district. And that, the drainage district and city each provide services. So yes, there are taxes associated with funding those services, but it's not quote double taxation. It's going to fund the activities of each of those separate legal entities. So just making that clear. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Chief Lugel?
Officer position. I've spoken to Isaac, trying to maybe streamline instead of going out ads and interviews, maybe trying to compile this. I listened last month about wanting to know where we were going with the polls, so I'm going to start on my report. I promise every meeting that there'll be something there, but that's and on March 15th, the IS came in and did an assessment. Was pretty good. They gave us a lot of suggestions, so I'm looking for. Said should have it. Hiring is ongoing until that. Code enforcement, I kind of added that on last minute. We did have 2 complaints that were investigated. I have to out. I will try to give you numbers, the type of complaints coming in and how we resolve them. Those community engagement, I did add a funding line for that next year. And we have our Coffee with a Cop event coming on April 1st. Also will be on day and as the summer months get here.
Thank you. Councilor Friends?
No comments tonight. Thanks.
Councilor Santiago? McHugh?
Oh, I'm good too. Thank you.
Councilor Holmes?
I'll just be very brief. I got the chance to meet with the Community Action Team. They're a group based in St. Helens that provides social resources across 3 counties, Columbia, Clatsop, and Tillamook. I've got a pamphlet here that covers all of the resources they have available, which does include services around housing. And so I think they are providing some really excellent services for the cities as well as the residents in terms of helping to keep people in their housing, but when we have an unhoused situation, being a resource to manage that as well. I've seen some discussion on social media, concerns about how communities are dealing with that, and just want folks to know that we do have an excellent resource. And then they also publish this directory of a wide range of social resources available throughout the county. So if anyone would like a copy of that, I have that here.
Thank you. Councilor Miller?
Thank you. I'm going to keep this as short as I possibly can. I know we're running late here. I attended the county commissioner meeting on March 8th. And just something that I thought was noteworthy is the city of Rainier is looking at doing a UGB land swap. So I thought that was a little bit relevant to mention here because of our 50-year plan and what we got going on here. Something that I thought was kind of interesting, and for those of you that know the Rainier area, is their services, city services run up closer around the high school, the school area. So that is the primary area that they're actually looking to potentially do a UGB expansion. The only other topic I got is that Mayor Backus and I met to talk about bringing a potential resolution forward to City Council on the sole source matter related to 901. So pending some further details that we need to work out with our General Counsel, Peter Watts, you may see a resolution at the next meeting. Thank you.
Senate Grayson.
Nothing. Thank you.
I'll brief CET meeting this last week was very delightful out at PCC. First time I'd been out there. A lot of good things are happening. Can't wait to see their success. I did go to the child care, Columbia County Child Care meeting this morning, and Megan went last time as well. And it's interesting to see that Clatsop County has done a really good job with their child care program, earning $500,000 in grants and matching funds to help that. So I think our county is really looking forward to getting involved. Historical Society went a week or so ago, and they got a big Christmas celebration plan this Christmas. So that will be a lot of fun. And we didn't mention, like you said, Earth Day, April 22nd. A lot of stuff there, and we've got flyers, and I think that will be good idea. And the consent agenda, thank you, Alex, for bringing that up. I would like to look at doing that to some of those items that we can, that we've already got great information on through staff reports, that we could speed the meetings up a little bit by just putting in the consent agenda. Yeah, that's all I have.
Mayor, may I add one thing real quick? I just want to say thank you to Peter and Ashley. I know this takes away from your personal time, and Ashley, I know you have a family from previous comments, so I know these meetings run late, and I just want to say thank you.
Okay, we do have an executive session. So City of Scappoose will now meet in executive session for the purpose of ORS 192.660. Executive session is held pursuant to ORS 192-660, parentheses 2, parentheses D, labor negotiations, which allows the city council to meet in executive session. Representatives of the news media and designated staff shall be allowed to attend the executive session. All other members of the audience are asked to leave the room. Representatives of the news media are specifically directed not to report on any of the deliberations during the executive session, except to state the general subject of the session as previously announced. No decision may be made in executive session, and at the end of the executive session, we will return to open session and welcome the audience back into the room.